When they first announced the parcels that were up for auction in December, it included parcels of land in the city of Moab that had houses on them. It included the Moab golf course. It was clear that they just hadn't even looked at what they were trying to rush out the door. It was rushed because it was the very last auction of the Bush administration. Oil and gas auctions happen quarterly, but the process of redoing a resource management plan is a really huge process that takes many years. That whole process was required in order to open up new lands for drilling, which during every previous administration were off limits. So they had to kind of time it so that they could rewrite the rules that would allow them to drill in these areas and then hold the auction as quickly as possible, because they knew that future administrations probably would not allow these lands to be drilled. And in fact, the Obama transition team had already indicated that before the auction happened, that they thought this process was inappropriate. There was a protest that was being organized outside of this auction. So I got there and briefly talked to a couple of them and said, hey, let's go inside. That's where the action is. We've got to disrupt things in there. And they said, oh, they won't even let you in. Security will just drag you out at the door. And I said, well, then let's get dragged out at the door and at least make that statement. And rather than drag me out, they said, hi, are you here for the auction? And I said, yes, I am. And they said, would you like to be a bidder? And I said, yes, I would. And so I signing where it said, yes, I understand that it's a offense to bid without the intent to pay. And so at that point, they signed me in and gave me bid card number 70. It was pretty cold, emotionally. It was just very, very businesslike. They weren't describing the parcels when they were auctioning them off. It was just kind of like number 36578, just very sterile. There was actually a woman that I knew from church that was sitting on the other side of the room and in the back, and she started to become emotional just about how cold and heartless this whole process was. And she actually started crying. She was obviously feeling that as a sadness, and I was feeling it more as an anger. And so I started out bidding just to drive up the prices. And so I was being effective with that, but also still seeing that there was the opportunity to do more, that I had the potential to actually win those parcels and possibly create enough chaos that things would still be up in the air for the new administration, and that there was a chance that those parcels could be protected and that oil kept in the ground. At the time I was thinking, if I do this, I'll probably go to prison for 2 or 3 years. Could I live with that? And I thought, yeah, it would suck really bad, but I could live with it. But on the other hand, if I see this opportunity right in front of me and turn my back on it, could I live with that? And that's what I struggled with for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and finally came to the realization that if I had to deal with all the things that we're on track for right now, all these catastrophic impacts of climate change and the unprecedented human suffering, knowing that I had an opportunity to do something about it and I didn't do it, I really couldn't live with that. That's something that I couldn't have on my conscience. And once I made that decision, I just started winning every single parcel. And so after I'd won 14 in a row, they stopped the auction, and an agent came over to me and said, we need to talk outside. And at that point asked me basically what I was doing there. And I told him flat out, my intention is to disrupt this auction in any way that I can. And so at that point they took me into custody and questioned me for several more hours before releasing me.